you for being here. Session 6 of the Principles of Miracles. Before we begin reading at that material, I want to share some of the topics that we're going to see in this session, introduce some of these terms so that they have more meaning perhaps when we get to them. A fundamental term in the Course of Miracles is for the practitioner of miracles to be ready for miracles, to be in a state of mind. Obviously, if you're all afraid and combobulated and forgetful, you're not in a position to represent miracles in your life. So we refer to the miracle readiness, the miraculous state of mind, which you can think of it as a peaceful mind that remembers a sense I'm here for a purpose. I'm surrounded by my brothers, and I can be of help when I am in this miraculous state of mind. We'll also talk about a topic that is a difficult one for many people. It has to do with the way miracles operate within time and how there's actually a bit of eternity operating within time. We call it abolishing time, collapsing time. We'll get into that tonight. That's a deep topic. And we will revisit the topic of spiritual communication, making the distinctions between direct communication and indirect communication. This is a finer point within miracles. Many people probably missed it altogether or wouldn't really know what we're talking about there. We will talk of one of the forms of direct communication is the experience of revelation. And we will review how the Holy Spirit is the one who brings the revelation to us, again, in a form of direct communication. We will talk about a state of mind that is appropriate for you to experience the Creator, a sense of awe, a sense of worship and adoration, which you would never give to your brothers, but would be appropriate in your relationship to the Creator. And also, we'll talk on another topic that is similar to the understanding of collapsing time. It's called the vertical versus the horizontal perception in our approaches to the Creator. And this won't make any sense right now, but when we get into it, hopefully that we can make that clear. So hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader this evening is Susie H.
Principle 44. Miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind. By being one, this state of mind goes out to anyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker himself. The impersonal nature of miracles is because the atonement itself is one, uniting all creations with their creator. Do you want me to stop or keep going?
Since you stopped, let's pause there. So here's the concept of a miraculous state of mind. In order for miracles to come forth, at least one person has to be in a miraculous state of mind. The other one, it'd be one who is in need of receiving a miracle, so they might be confused and discombobulated. And a miraculous state of mind is one that is united with a broader purpose. David's rendering of that yesterday is allowing my mind to go higher. It's connecting with my higher self. So, in a miraculous state of mind, the mind goes, this is key, it's abstract. The mind is willing to help anyone, not just the people that you like, the people you know their names, the people that you have some agreement to be friends with. And the miraculous state of mind is a form of unconditional love. It goes out to anyone. And so it doesn't require what we would call the conscious direction by the miracle worker. I'm here to help my friends. It's more broad and generalized. I'm here to be helpful to anyone who needs it. And then, as we will read again and again and later tonight, is then Christ decides who can best benefit from your help in that moment. For you and I would not really know who most is in need of our help. We can't possibly know who's ready for a healing, but Christ can. So we call it these miracles, it's an impersonal. I'm not directing it to my preferred group of compatriots, but it's available to anyone. These are attributes of the miracle. And again, it's impersonal in the sense that it's of not judging some people as worthy and others as not really worthy of my efforts and my time. It's free of all that judgment. So we say that it's impersonal. Let's go on.
45. The miracle is an expression of an inner awareness of Christ and the acceptance of his atonement. The mind is then in a state of grace and naturally becomes gracious both to the host within and the stranger without. By bringing in the stranger, he becomes your brother.
Mm-hmm. So we've learned in the previous miracle principles that a miracle involves an expression of love to another. And so there's and it comes from a gracious state of mind, which is gracious both to yourself, the host. It recognizes your own inherent worth. I am a child of the Creator. I am here. My part is essential in God's plan. So it's gracious to one's own self as well as to the other. And by being gracious to the other, they, even though you might not know who they are, you view them as a brother. This is the quality of the state of grace. It's loving, it's caring, and it does not discriminate among souls. It's kind to all souls. Any comments or questions here? Some of this is very familiar to you. Others, this will be a good help. It never hurts to review.
46. A miracle is never lost. It touches many people you do not even know, and sometimes produces undreamed of changes in forces of which you are not even aware. That is not your concern. The miracle will always bless you. The miracles you are not asked to perform have not lost their value. They are still expressions of your own state of grace, but the action aspect of the miracle should be Christ controlled. because of his complete awareness of the whole plan. The impersonal nature of miracle-mindedness ensures your grace, but only Christ is in a position to know where grace can be bestowed.
Mhm. So recall that we read before about the difference between a Christ controlled miracle, a Christ directed miracle, versus an indiscriminate miracle. And yeah, so what is that difference? Let's quickly review. An indiscriminate miracle is the idea originates with me. I decided that this is a moment where this person needs my help. It's done with the best of intents. It's done with, hey, I want to help you. But it's done of my own initiative. I'm the origin of the idea of let's help there. So, what about those situations? These are miracles you are not asked to perform by the Christ within. But with the best of intentions, they have not lost their value. They're still an expression of grace. However, they might be you're attempting to help someone who's doesn't want your help or who's in no not ready really to benefit from your help. It tells us other places an indiscriminate miracle may or may not result in a positive outcome, whereas a Christ controlled miracle will always be directed to the individual that is ready right now to benefit from that experience. So, so as a result, the action aspect of the miracle should be Christ controlled because Christ is the only one who can know where grace can be bestowed and received. Let's say this in another way. A miracle is a gift, it's a heavenly gift, but not everybody is ready to receive that gift in any given moment. As you know, in recovery, we know people that need recovery are not always ready to begin their recovery. They have to be ready. So Christ is the only one that is in a position to know the inner workings of the other person, whether or not they can benefit in that moment from an expression of grace. Susie?
Yeah, I have a really amazing experience of this weekend. We had some family members in town, one of which it was and has been drinking fairly heavily. And um, she's been in a position before where she's spoken to me about this. But the whole weekend, I kept asking Holy Spirit, what am I supposed to say? And not what am I supposed to say anything? And I never got any kind of answer to or feeling to speak up at all. And I was ready, willing, and but there was never, it was sort of like, it's not the right time, it's not right. And it's exactly what this says.
Mm.
And yeah, so it's a really good example of maybe I might have interfered in the past or thought, and it would have been Susie directed, not Christ directed. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
That's very helpful, Susie. And it really does illustrate exactly what we're talking about. Your part is to be ready and able. And the Course, ready and willing. And the Course says that that is our responsibility. That part is voluntary on our part. It's a choice. I'm ready to help. I'm willing to help. That does not mean now is the moment. And then Christ will be the one to recognize the moment. I want to spend a moment just, I want to drill down a little bit into what that might, how you might experience that. And so Susie says, I was ready and I was willing. I knew what was going on here with a person's suffering. But in the impulse from Christ to perform a miracle wells up from deep within you as an expression of grace and love, and feels like this is the best possible thing I could do right now. It almost feels compelled to reach out and help. What would love do now? Love would reach out to this person right now in this way. And so, in that sense, it's beyond the phase of sitting there wondering, should I do this or should I not? And evaluating it, it feels compelling to do so that one does so without question. And what compelled? Because it comes from the depth of your being, your heart, your soul, your mind are all in alignment to do it. That's miracles express themselves in that way, not because I had planned it ahead of time that I need to talk to this person. Okay. Thank you for that illustration, Susie. It does really speak to this. Let's go on.
47. Miracle mindedness means miracle readiness. Readiness means that you should always keep your perceptions straight so that you will always be ready, willing, and able. These are the essentials for listen, learn, and do. You must be ready to listen, willing to learn, and able to do. Only the last is involuntary because it is the application of miracles which must be Christ controlled. The other two, which are the voluntary aspects of miracle mindedness, are up to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so I was jumping ahead of myself there and commenting on this before. We read earlier that A Course in Miracles is a part of a broader plan of atonement that involves everybody. It can be viewed as a great crusade. That's the term within the Course. And their slogan for that crusade is listen, learn, do, which is here, listen, learn, and do, which is here elaborated on as a three-phase process. The first two phases are up to you to volunteer, that you are ready to listen to the guidance of your inner voice. This is a miracle ready state of mind. It means you have to be in a state of mind in that moment where you're willing and ready to be guided by spirit. Two, you have to be willing to learn to discern illusions from the truth so that you can consistently undo illusions and instead invite the truth. You have to be willing to learn to correct errors in your own mind so that, and those two, if you both of these happen in the same moment where you're miracle ready, you're ready to listen to the voice, and you're entirely willing to undo errors in a state of grace, a state of love, then in that moment, when Christ sees, when Christ, who's in a position to know who can receive your grace, in that moment, it wells up within you. And the third phase is it's described as involuntary, meaning it's compelling. It comes from deep within you. We call it Christ controlled miracles. The first two are voluntary. You must be willing to do so of your own free will. The last one feels like I have to do this. This is my part to play, my contribution. Um, so I'm not trying to say that in the moment these things happen, all this will be, you'll be fully aware of it. Many of these things happen in a flash of time. A person in front of you stumbles and falls, and there you are. You don't sit there and say, well, am I ready? Am I willing? Is this the moment? All this just happens rapidly when you're in a gracious state of mind, when your perceptions are straight, when your perceptions, when you are in a certain level of quiet and peace within yourself, then there's no barriers to this happening. Okay, we'll go on if there's no comments or questions. We're going to focus now on these last few principles, which are deep and profound, that have to do with the idea of revelation and how that operates in time, and also how that differs from miracles operating in time. And so you're in for in-depth version of the principles here.
48. All is an appropriate response to miracles. Revelation is literally unspeakable because it is an experience of an unspeakable love. All should be reserved for revelation, to which it is perfectly and correctly applicable. It is not appropriate for miracles because a state of awe is worshipful. It implies that one of a lesser order stands before a greater one. This is the case only when a soul stands before its creator. Souls are perfect creations and experience awe only in the presence of the creator of perfection. The miracle, on the other hand, is a sign of love among equals. Equals cannot be in awe of one another because awe implies inequality. It is therefore an inappropriate reaction to me. An elder brother is entitled to respect for his greater experience and a reasonable amount of obedience for his greater wisdom. He is also entitled to love because he is a brother, and also to devotion if he is devoted. It is only my devotion that entitles me to yours. There is nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The main difference between us as yet is that I have nothing else. This leaves me in a state of true holiness, which is only a potential in you.
I believe it's very clear, this difference between all in front of the creator, which would be inappropriate with others. That would imply love amongst equals does not compel all, because that would imply a hierarchy of some sort. I think all this is clear. what I find most interesting here is these statements that Christ is making about himself here. First of all, he's devoted to us in championing this cause of our return to love. He's out the leader to of that cause and states very clear there's nothing about me that you cannot attain. The Christ within you is a living reality. Um, and then, but the part that I find most interesting is he says that as far as the God essence within us, I have nothing that doesn't come from God. The main difference between us is that I don't have anything else but what comes from God. And thus we know that he's referencing our illusions, our idols, our self deceptions, our belief systems of lacking and everything else, all that clutter and chaos that we have in our stored in our subconscious mind that we have endorsed from time to time. Christ is free of that. He has none of that, which means that he is fully manifesting a state of holiness, whereas until we heal, our holiness remains a potential within us that is awaiting its day to blossom and manifest outward. But that day requires that we be willing to undo all those idols, self-deceptions, and illusions that we have made. This principle continues. It's a long one.
No man cometh until the Father but by me is among the most misunderstood statements in the Bible. It does not mean that I am in any way separate or different from you except in time, which does not really exist at all. Actually, the quotation is more meaningful if it is considered on a vertical rather than on a horizontal axis. Regarded along the vertical, man stands below me and I stand below God. In the process of rising up, I am higher. This is because without me, the distance between God and man would be too great for you to encompass.
So
I bridge the.
let's pause there.
Okay.
Because this introduces, for the first time, and will be referred to again, this concept, and this is an abstract concept about a vertical perception versus horizontal perception. So we're talking about directions here, vertical versus horizontal. And you can think of it as two different perceptual systems. In the horizontal perceptual system, time continues on seemingly forever. It just goes on and on and on and on. It's a long road. Okay. Now, that would be living according to the quote laws, air quotes, the laws of time, which are not true laws, but these are beliefs in the laws of time. Vertical perception leaps out of that framework and into a new framework, which is timeless. So we're talking about a shift into a perceptual system that is not limited by time or preoccupied by time. It's independent of the time factor. And you say, well, how can you do that? Well, using the laws of eternity, using the holy instant. This is what a miracle does, is it involves a shift, a momentary shift from a view of like we're on this journey and we're going to be at it forever and ever because time rolls along. A sense of being trapped by limited by time, and temporarily shifts us into a holy instant in which anything seems possible in that moment of grace, in that moment of expression. Um, so, in that shift, all of humanity is no longer in this long train of moving through time, but rather shifting into the vertical. It's as if we are rising up together towards the creator in the vertical. We're not in a long line where there's some people in front of the line and other people's in the back, but rather we're all rising up in the vertical together. Um, and in that view, Christ stands ahead of us. We're rising up to the Creator. In that view, Christ is leading us upward to God. Remember, we're talking about an explanation of the New Testament statement, no man comes unto the Father but by me. We're elaborating on that. So as we rise up, Christ is already has nothing else but God. And so he's already in a state of pure holiness, but we are being following along in that same path together in the vertical axis. This is the spiritual realm. It does not obey the laws of time when we're in that state of grace. So it says, I am, it does not mean I am in any way separate or different from you, except in time, which is really not a reality of it. Time is a construct. So, a few more footnotes to this. People have a really hard time letting go of their constructs of time. If your mind is fighting this right now, well, welcome to it would be certain your ego identity in time is going to reject these concepts. It's certain. Your ego concept says, nope, you talk about eternity and shifting away from time. I have none of that. That's not where I belong. I belong rooted in time. Well, so what are we to do? Is just allow this concept into your mind. You don't have to believe it right now or accept it, but don't reject it outright. Just say, oh, that's an interesting concept. I never thought of it that way. And let the Holy Spirit clear out all those idols that we've made in time, all our self deceptions and self concepts that we've invested into being rooted in time. As they get undone, it becomes easier and more inviting to accept this belief of about a shift in perceptions into the vertical. So a couple hands I see. Heather?
Yeah, what really helps me with this is the whole concept that vertical time is the now. It goes from, past or present. The vertical time is now, and it's only now, and it's everything's in the now. So that is very helpful for me to make that shift to say it's not hard for me to imagine that. You say vertical time is everything that's in just in the now, and that's where Christ is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we can elaborate on the now as you can think of it as the eternal now, as the eternal present. It's the it's reliving the oneness of all creation while you're still in time, but conscious of the power of eternity being alive right in the now. Kathleen?
So I at first struggled with this a little bit because um, in 79 it says it does not mean that I am in any way separate or different from you except in time, which does not really exist. Right. And in my head, I think of God in me, not somewhere I have to get to. But if I flip back to number 28, where it talks about the difference between miracles and revelations as it relates to like our conscious and super conscious and subconscious mind, that's when it all kind of gelled for me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does to me. Uh-huh. Thank you. Yeah, so here's another way to state it. You have available to you two ways of experiencing a moment, any moment. One is being kind of a two-dimensional time being trapped in the limits of time, not able to get ahead any more than one day at a time. The past being and the future locking you in to a static position. The other way is a timeless view that where you are free, where you are an equal with everyone, where there is no hierarchy anymore, no inequality. And it's a state of mental awareness. We're not saying the physical world changes. No one is saying that you float away from the surface of the planet, but that your awareness that there are principles, that there's an eternal reality that is present in the eternal now, right here and now, that is operating. So much more can be said on this. We'll read along, and if it's not, I don't expect it to be clear, but we'll elaborate on it further. Susie?
I bridge the distance as an elder brother to man on the one hand, and as a son of God on the other. My devotion to my brothers has placed me in charge of the sonship, which I can render complete only to the extent to which I can share it. This may appear to contradict the statement, I and my Father are one, but there are still separate parts in the statement in recognition that the Father is greater. The original statement was, are of one kind. The Holy Spirit is the bringer of revelations. Revelations are indirectly inspired by me because I am close to the Holy Spirit and alert to the revelation readiness of my brothers. I can thus bring down to them more than they can draw down to themselves.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're still using this vertical concept of perception on our way to God. And you can think of it as we still have a ways to go in that rising up, a process of rising up. And Christ is higher in that rising up. And this distance that remains between ourselves and God, and we're talking about what do we mean by distance? What we really mean is perfect union between your conscious mind and the creator when I say a perfect union, I mean a continuous perfect union where there's nothing else in the way whatsoever. It's when the mind is in a state of heaven, healed and whole. That distance between us and God would be too great for us to encompass on our own. And therefore, Christ acts as a bridge in the distance, as an elder brother, bridges that distance, atones for the distance, and my word, supplements our experience in ways that we could not manage on our own. And so, how does that work? Let's talk about one. We've talked about miracles before, but for right now, we're going to talk about revelations. How does specifically, how does Christ bridge all that distance in the experience of revelation? Well, first of all, where does revelation come from? Christ is the translator of messages from the Father to us. He's the bringer of revelations. But those, you have to be in a state of mind to receive the revelations. They have to be free of fear and open to receiving a heavenly message. And we all know that we're not in that state of mind all the time. So you have to be ready. Christ is in a position to recognize when you're ready. And therefore, they are inspired by Christ because he is alert to the revelation readiness of my brothers, of you and I, and of others. He's alert to the moment when we're positioned to receive this gift of a message of revelation. And as a footnote, outside of A Course in Miracles, I've most often experienced this at 3 or 4 in the morning when I woke up in the middle of the night. I'll tell you why I think it is, just briefly. This is me speaking, not Course in Miracles, is when I'm rested, when I feel safe, where I've got nothing else to do, no other agenda. You wake up 3 in the morning and there's not like, I'm going to go back to sleep in a bit. No agenda, no place, no distractions, rested, comfortable, safe. It's like the ideal state of mind to not be preoccupied with my own illusions. And if I choose to turn towards the spirit, there are times at which the channel is open for communication. So Christ is in a position to bring down to you and I more than we could receive of ourselves, because he's aware of our readiness for these things. Okay, so that's the explanation. Having said all that, these are finer points, and if it doesn't land on you, or if it's not, you say, gosh, that feels so remote, don't be bothered by that. These are, in order to receive revelations, first, we must overcome our fears. And so this is more the graduate level, not the entry level. But this is why it's here in principle number 48 and not in principle number 1. Okay, we'll go on.
49. The Holy Spirit is the highest communication medium. Miracles do not involve this type of communication because they are temporary communication devices. When man returns to his original form of communication with God, the need for miracles is over. The Holy Spirit mediates higher to lower communication, keeping the direct channel from God to man open for revelation. Revelation is not reciprocal. It is always from God to man. The miracle is reciprocal because it involves equality.
Mm-hmm. So, revelations are direct communications from the Creator, but it's a one-way communication. It's the Creator delivering a gift to your mind from man to God. It differs from a miracle, which is a contact between equal brothers of equality, where we are working towards a common good together, reciprocal because it involves equality. So these are different types of communication. Miracles are intended to, they're temporary communication devices intended to accelerate the healing of our minds. They're temporary. When there is a vision of a state in the future where all minds are healed, speaking about a future, when that happens, the need for miracles is over. When that happens, mankind returns to the original form of communication, which is holy oneness with all the minds of creation. It's one-mindedness with all creation. Miracles are not needed when all minds of creation are perfectly united in a common purpose and a common awareness. By definition, healing has already occurred and is complete. So miracles are temporary. They're, for now, they are, the most important thing right now is miracles to heal the mind. The rest, the kind of advanced what I'll call it graduate level studies that come along with revelation, will come in time. But this is a course in miracles, because what's needed most, and it's obvious to us all, is that we need to heal ourselves and we need to help others who are ready to heal, receive the healing. So we're talking about types of communication here. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I have shown this before and it's a lot, but there are a number of types of communication that are mentioned within A Course in Miracles, and I've arbitrarily, this is my own designation, segmented them into 7 different types, of which I recommend you begin with an attitude of gratitude and practice that on a daily level. There is another type, which is prayer, where you are sending a message to God. There's another kind where the Holy Spirit is sending a message to you. There is another kind where Christ is directing you in the moment to perform a miracle. And then again, these divisions, you have to be a little bit free with me here. You could easily recombine these things in other ways. There are holy encounters with another soul. This is when there has been a shift from the horizontal to the vertical. And in that moment, in a state of grace, we encounter another and recognize the holiness within them. There is this thing that we just read about, revelation, which is a direct channel, a one-way communication from God. And finally, there's the original form of communication, which I think the word communion is perhaps most effective symbol or term. You could call it other things. This is a perfect state of oneness and shared joy between the creator and the one mind of all creation. It's the original form of perfect communication. So the Course of Miracles refers to all of these forms of communication. You and I can begin immediately with gratitude and appreciation, with blessings. We can certainly practice prayer and meditation. We can, and then we advance to the point where we more and more, instead of listening to the voice of our ego, we turn to the voice of the Holy Spirit. That's enough to get one started, and the rest will follow. All right. That was meant to be more of a review than an introduction. Sorry if that was the first time you saw it. We went through it really fast. Susan?
50. The miracle is a learning device which lessens the need for time. In the pronounce that for me. Longitudinal, the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the true equality of all the members of the sonship appears to involve almost endless time. However, the sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception, which the miracle entails, introduces an interval from which the doer and the receiver both emerge much farther along in time than they would otherwise have been. The miracle thus has the unique property of shortening time. By rendering the space of time it occupies unnecessarily. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time it covers. It substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. It does this by the underlying recognition of perfect equality and holiness between the doer and the receiver on which the miracle rests. We said before that the miracle abolishes time. It does this by a process of collapsing it and thus abolishing certain intervals within it. It does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence. It establishes an out-of-pattern time interval, which is not under the usual laws of time. Only in this sense is it timeless. By collapsing time, it literally saves time. Much as daylight saving time does, it rearranges the distribution of light.
So most people reading this, you'd have no idea what to talk about. Yeah, I want to acknowledge that that's the starting point. But it can be understood. And I have a way of illustrating it that I think is very effective. And when we used to meet in a room together, I could illustrate it very easily. But now we're over Zoom, so I have to use words. But I need you to picture what I'm talking about here, as if we were in a room together, because that's how I know to illustrate it. Let's say in the large room, I have a rope that is 100 feet long, and along the rope, it's divided into increments of 1 foot each. So it's a 100-foot long rope with 100 marks along the way, equal marks, representing years of learning of your life. That 100 years is your life. This is your rope line or your timeline. Okay. Now, and that rope is laying straight on the floor. And what we're going to do is shift from the horizontal part of the rope laying on the floor and we're going to introduce a vertical to it. And so I'm going to go up there and grab the rope on one of the marks that says 2025. I'm going to pick that point up, and I'm going to lift it up 2 feet in the air. Okay. And what's going to happen is the rest of the rope is going to collapse together. The past and the future are going to be pulled together, and I'm going to have 2 feet in the air. I would have shortened, okay, for the momentarily, I've shortened the length of the rope. It used to be 100 feet long, but now I've pulled it up 2 feet in the air. So there's 2 feet going up and 2 feet going down. It's 4 feet shorter now. Can you picture that? That's a rope. Well, a miracle is a way of shortening time. A miracle involves a sudden shift from the horizontal plane to the vertical plane. This is what the miracle does. It collapses time, has a unique property of shortening time in a way that you don't have to fully comprehend. Just follow along the analogy. The 100-foot rope has now been shortened by 4 feet, and thus saving the distance. It's now shorter. We've saved time. Now, we said before, the miracle abolishes time by a process of collapsing it, and thus abolishing the interval between these intervals are really the time it would take for you to learn to become a holy child of God. What are we talking? Practical application? It would be the time it would take for your present concept of yourself, the one you have today, and all the limitations and maybe confusion and doubts, whatever the way you view yourself today, and the way in which you could view yourself if you practice this for the program for the next 4 years from now, that version of you, a miracle brings you into that version of yourself suddenly. It's a shift in awareness. We're not saying your body has changed or you've moved anywhere in space. We're saying that now all of your dark shadow self-deceptions that you have had since you were a young person are now no longer haunt you, no longer a part of your self-concept. Didn't we read that Christ has nothing else but grace? So you've dumped some of your illusions of yourself quickly, not because you're so clever, but because the miracle has these unique properties of shortening time. We're not saying that you or I are the source of these miracles. We're participants, willing participants in the experience. And you must have faith. You must have faith to experience this. Because if you block yourself by disbelief and doubts and well, then it just doesn't happen. It interferes. You have to be willing to do this. So this all happens. We're not saying, by the way, just to be clear, that you do a time jump from 2025 to 2029, and all of a sudden you're in the world of 2029. And how did I get here? That's nonsense. We're talking about the ego troubles that could take normally years and years of therapy or help to get rid of. You become free. And then here's the final point. How do you do this? By loving another person. By loving another person. You cannot do this of yourself. You must share the love with another. And in that moment of sharing, it frees you of your own self-limitations and self-doubts. So let me pause there and take some comments. Susie?
So I remember when we first, started doing this years ago, and we all had such an issue with time and collapsing time and all that. But I have really come to understand what this means, because before the course, I was suffering in time, as we believe time is. And then by doing the lessons and praying and the workbook lessons over and over and over and over again. So a miracle, they say, is a change of thought, shift in perception from fear to love, right? And I've had many, many healing things that I used to suffer with in my mind that are gone. So if that didn't happen, so that's a total collapse of time, because today or the last many months, certain things are gone. So if I wasn't doing this work, they wouldn't be gone. So by doing that and experiencing this change of thought, I'm collapsing time. And it's so easy for me to understand this now. And even the intervals within it that I would suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer. And now those thoughts are gone. So I've collapsed many, could be years if I wasn't doing this work. It was years. So I really understand this concept. And when you say to have faith and trust, yes, because when I started this, it's like I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember just all of us, we were so new, saying, well, what do you mean, John, again? But time. But this is exactly what it is. So
Can
I
I
would
ask you, Susie,
yeah.
not at length, but how long and how much effort have you given in this life to healing?
A lot, enormous amount of time to healing.
Decades?
Yes. But yes, but A Course in Miracles is what gave me, I would say 90% of my healing. My healing that's here to stay. My healing that's lasting. My healing where my thoughts have really been purified, corrected, changed. It's the first course where I truly wasn't trying to fix my ego with my ego or my spiritual ego. So I would say decades of trying to heal, but 5 years of healing in a far higher, deeper, vertical way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Susie. Noel?
Well, speaking of time, I am always very much encouraged by several miracles of Jesus in the Bible. One woman was bent over for 18 years. Another, the woman with the issue of blood. I don't recall how many, but I think it was double-digit years. The cripple by the pool of Bethesda. One could even say Lazarus, more dramatic, a few days. Nevertheless, he did not pay any attention to time. He was not stopped by it in any way. And I have the tendency to say, oh, but, because of the time that's gone by. And yet, even this principle tells that we don't have to pay any attention to our perceptions about what time has supposedly done to our bodies, our minds, our situations that could stop a healing.
Yes, so true. Yes, thank you. That's as far as we're going to go for tonight. This is deep concepts. I just wanted to add one more thing. Why is it that, or how is it that these things are possible, these shifts with the unique properties of shortening time by collapsing it and abolishing intervals? Well, it says because Christ is now in control of time and space, and these aren't laws, these are toys in his hand. He can manipulate them, manipulate time and space. This is why Christ is in a position to know the exact time in which the person who most needs your help and is ready to receive a miracle, he's in the position to know when the moment is right. And that's why miracles are controlled by Christ, because they are time sensitive. As you know, you try to help a person that doesn't want your help. That's bad timing. The person has to be willing to receive help. And Christ is the one who has this awareness, and he can therefore manipulate the factors around that play into our healing. So that's as far as we're going to go. That's pretty deep work. I did want to reiterate that there's one more session in which we'll wrap up the principles of miracles, and we'll do that in our next session. So allow these ideas to just rest in your mind and say, wow, that was really quite a journey into timelessness. I might not fully understand it, but there's much more to this creation than what we understand. And this is about taking away the covers from our eyes that have caused us to fixate on illusions. And as we remove those covers, we're enabled to see the world through a new set of eyes, through fresh eyes. And of course, the miracle certainly is doing that for us all. So thank you, Susie, for being our reader tonight. Thank you all for your attention, and we'll look forward to getting together again real soon. Namaste.
Thank you, Susie.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Susie. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you.
Week, everyone.
Hang on,
Thanks,
Veronica.
Jonica. Good night.
Thanks, Jonica.